And we are live. We should be live if anyone wants to check for us.
Crew is big and it keeps getting bigger.
Don't say that word. We're a family-friendly stream here.
That's because Jesus Christ is my
Best
Taiwan
friend.
Open University.
That clap was probably pretty loud, but it'll let us know that we are live.
You're live.
Perfect. Y'all can hear me?
Bill Clinton, Arkansas.
We had a thing we were doing. We were just goofing off, doing those NBC starting lineups. And we are about to get ready for what's going to be a very interesting episode of 2KU Weekly. Welcome once again. I'm Taiwan 101 with Danny V and Dapigbear, who's returning once again. We're not going to be doing the game-by-game graphics because we have a lot to get through aside from that, but we had a very exciting week, don't forget. We had a lot of big upsets, a lot of pieces falling into place, and now all the championship games are set for next week's big slate on Friday and Saturday. So we're going to get things started with our top stories of the week. The big one was the final pieces falling into place for the conference championship. Colorado getting past Kansas thanks to a win over Texas Tech and a Kansas loss to K-State. That puts the Buffaloes in the conference championship game. Central Michigan was sitting back after they beat Western, but they had to wait throughout the 2KU Saturday stream last night as Northern Illinois beating Eastern Michigan 34-28 put the Chippewas in the MAC championship. Northern Illinois is now 11-1, but they're not playing in the conference title game because they lose out on tiebreakers to the Chippewas, who beat them earlier in the year, if you remember. Oregon falling hard, especially after a rocky performance to Oregon State. They managed to come back a little bit, but the final score, 30-28, still was not in the Ducks' favor. Meanwhile, in the Southland Conference, Southeastern Louisiana proving that you're never out of the hunt, no matter how tough it may seem, as they pull off a huge upset against Nicholls State. McNeese slips behind them as well. The Southeastern Louisiana Lions will play the David against the Goliath, that is the unbeaten Stephen F. Austin. Number 19, Michigan, falling to Ohio State for the first time since 2018. That definitely cost them a slot in the conference championship game with their loss and Notre Dame's loss earlier in the year. Michigan State is your winner of the Big Ten Legends Division. They'll play Illinois for the conference title game. A big upset that didn't shake up the conference championships, but was still worthy of talking with. Tulane beats the LSU Tigers for the first time since 2002. And that might mean some big changes in the SEC. Meanwhile, some chaos in the WAC. New Mexico State falling to rival UTEP, and Nevada losing to UNLV. What that means now is that Idaho takes the win in the WAC Mountain, and they are now the favorites in the conference championship game. They'll be playing Nevada. Danny, your thoughts on this week?
Yeah, this week was a really chaotic week, and what else can you expect from rivalry weekend?
Big Bear?
Again, it's once again it's rivalry week, and just saw a lot of great games this weekend.
We'll take a move on here, going straight to. Actually, before that, remember, don't forget to join us on Tumblr at 2KUniverse, tumblr.com/2KUniverse for some more bonus content. But we'll move straight into our games this week. On Wednesday, the big one, Ball State getting an upset over Miami, Ohio, 28-10. The Red Hawks fall to 6-6 on the year. As we'll now take a step over to Thursday. We're only going to do Wednesday, Thursday to start. As San Jose State winning 40-38 in a rivalry over Fresno State. Meanwhile, Mississippi State getting an upset win in overtime over the Ole Miss Rebels. Danny, your thoughts on Wednesday, Thursday?
Yeah, these games were really good. I mean, one thing you have to mention is the Egg Bowl. Ole Miss, Mississippi State went to overtime, and that was Ole Miss's chance to be potentially right outside of a bowl berth. If we were going to call up any spots, they might have been coming up, but since they lost to Mississippi State, sucks to be them.
It's a thing that you don't. That even though there was nothing to play for in this game, that means you have nothing to lose. So you put everything out there to beat your rival, and it shows with how well Mississippi State ended up performing in spite of a very rough season. Pigbear, your thoughts on Wednesday and Thursday?
Yeah, yeah. Again, you have nothing to play for, and you have nothing to lose. And you just got to put 110% into that game.
All right. We have a lot of games to talk about for Friday. The games in yellow, once again, are the ones I'll be pointing out. To start, we're going to start with the NC State rivalry. North Carolina taking the win on the road in Raleigh, 40-29. The final, FIU winning the Shula Bowl in an upset over rival FAU 22-19 on the road. Nebraska beating Iowa on the road in a low-scoring affair, 15-7. The final, Charlotte picking up the rare win this year over Old Dominion, 30-20. Southern Miss getting a 30, putting 36, but not enough to beat the upset Arkansas, 48-36, as the Razorbacks pick up their second win of the year. Your Coastal Carolina putting 30-8 on Chattanooga to end out their season, and Colorado getting a 27-24 win over Texas Tech on the road means that the Buffaloes would now just have to wait for Kansas. We'll talk about them once again later. Danny?
Yeah, for this group, I mean, this was a really fun weekend. I mean, so many good rivalries, so many big opportunities for upsets, so many big events that happened.
Pigbear?
Yeah, just going into Raleigh and getting the job done, so they couldn't do in real life. North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And North Carolina finishes 11-1. They get Virginia Tech in the conference championship game. Move on to the other half of the Friday games. Florida State losing to Florida, 32-29. The final. Florida finishes 5-7 with the win here. TCU winning a close, relatively low-scoring game over Baylor, 28-24. The final. Well, Boise State ending strong, capping off a perfect regular season, 36-16 the final. And the war on I-4, which decided the Conference USA East, UCF heads into Tampa, a hostile environment, and gets the job done, 27-22 the final score. Appalachian State single-handedly putting themselves as the best offense in the SoCon, as they got a 61-28 performance over rival West Carolina. And we'll wrap up the Friday games with Arizona State putting 38-7 on rival Arizona to take on the Territorial Cup. Danny, your thoughts on the...
Yeah, this was a lot of fun matchups, a lot of good games, and I'm really happy UCF won. It's always a good, big rivalry game, and always important for no matter which side is up or down, it's always going to be an important matchup.
It was especially important this year. Pigbear?
Yeah, just a good one for the Mountaineers over Western Carolina. Lay that hammer down on them.
I also would like to point out Air Force winning 24-10 over Utah State. That means they've clinched bowl eligibility by the skin of their teeth. We'll move on here to Week 13. A lot of games to talk about. We got two slides and I believe 3 rows to discuss. We'll start with the clean old-fashioned hate. Georgia Tech completely dominating in Atlanta over Georgia, 44-17. Virginia Tech beating Virginia for the Commonwealth Cup, 40-27. And Indiana getting a win on the road against a very tricky Purdue team in spite of their harsh record, 26-15. Army beating Georgetown, 29-20. They have a big showdown next week against, or 2 weeks from now, against Navy. Eastern Michigan coming up just short against Northern Illinois. A win would have put them in the conference championship game, but the loss means that it's Central Michigan who's going to Detroit. We'll move on to Rice winning 31-26 in an upset over Houston. And speaking of upsets, how about Ohio State going into Ann Arbor to take down the Wolverines? Trust me, as a Michigan fan, it's hard to say, but at least we got the win in real life. Dartmouth in do-or-die situation, winning 20-12 over Brown. They they take the second place spot in the Ivy League, which means they get an auto bowl bid. They'll be heading to the Garden State Bowl in a month's time. Kansas State, in 2 overtimes, beats their rival Kansas 37-33. That put Colorado in the Big 12 championship. Going down, we'll wrap with Pitt winning 38-24 over rival West Virginia in the good old backyard brawl. Pitt needed to win this game, and they just got it. So now they will be heading bowling. Danny, thoughts on the first row?
Yeah, there are a lot of fun matchups, a lot of good, clean, well, not really clean because I'm sure some of these ended up in some brawls, but one of the games I do want to point out is Kansas State. That one was a very fun matchup, double overtime classic for these two teams.
Mm-hmm. Pigbear?
Yeah, just sad to see that was on the backyard brawl. Big West Virginia guy here, so.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a move on. I'll also mention Temple beating Villanova 26-14. That means the Owls are 10-2 on the year. They already clinched their division. They'll be playing UConn in the conference championship. We'll move on here. Wisconsin on a winning field goal, beating rival Minnesota 10-9 in a low-scoring affair. Whiskey is going bowling. Meanwhile, in 2 overtimes, it's Dave's show who prevails over rival Miami. 34-27 the final. Heading to Cincy, Memphis getting a 31-20 road win. One of the best road teams in the country, Memphis is. So great to see them dominate once again. They'll be playing in their conference championship against UCF. How about the classic in-state college? In 3 overtimes, Penn State and Michigan State duel it out. The Spartans win 47-41, the final score. Or Michigan State, with Michigan's loss, is now your Big Ten Legends Division champion. And in overtime, Syracuse getting past a surging Boston College team. One more game I'll mention down the road, actually 2, because Alabama on the road winning the Iron Bowl. No matter how good the teams are, it's always a must-win game for both sides. And how about in Houston, neutral site game, Stephen F. Austin beating Sam Houston State 38-14. They're perfect on the regular season now. Danny?
Yeah, there are plenty of good matchups. I mean, one matchup that I do think I would like to point out might be, I think I would like to shout out definitely the Michigan State Penn State game. I mean, 3 overtime, that's not easy to play. And also, it's a really big game for both these teams, as both these teams one team wanted to go to the conference championship. Both these teams were playing for a trophy game, so it was really important for them.
If you remember the main channel streams from last year, you'd remember Penn State played a 5 overtime game in the Insight Bowl over Texas A&M. That was a tough game to win. How about you, Pigbear? Your thoughts on this second row?
Yeah, I just loads of parity in this row.
We'll move on from there to our next row. We have 2 more rows. How about Northwestern and Illinois going to 3 overtimes? However, the Fighting Illini just get it done to take down the Wildcats, who have lost 6 straight. Central Michigan getting the job done 27-18 over Western Michigan. They sealed their division. The Holy War, BYU, manages to go bowling with a win over Utah 21-19. Moving down the list, the Lone Star Showdown, Texas A&M hosting Texas. The Longhorns get the win 27-20. How about this upset that not a lot of people were talking about? Nicholls State falling 16-17 to Southeastern Louisiana. With that result, the 7-5 Lions are going to their conference championship game. They'll face off against Stephen F. Austin. Going down the row, Bedlam, Oklahoma State, right, just having their way with Oklahoma 54-23. Speaking of having their way, UConn finishes a perfect regular season with a 50-20 statement win over Rhode Island, and USC continues their winning ways 23-17 over Notre Dame. Danny, your thoughts here? Any games you want to point out?
Game I want to point out is the Lone Star Showdown between Texas and Texas A&M. 7-point game. Texas A&M, they needed that win to get to a bowl game, but sadly they just came out short. And let's see how does everything else go on from rest of here.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, just bedlam, more like bedlam.
But this time it's the other way around from what Dave showed on his last on that video. Let's move on to our last selection of games. How about one of the oldest rivalries in college football? Harvard hosting Yale. It was the Bulldogs who got the win 20-14. The biggest upset I think we might have seen all year. Tulane taking a wrench to LSU, knocking them away from what would have been a perfect regular season. 30-7, the final score. They may have overlooked their opponent, as might have Oregon. 30-28, the final score. We saw glimpses of Oregon State potentially being a contender. However, it was on full effect here, as they just had their way with the Ducks for the majority of this game, though they were able to make it a close game by the end. Stanford continuing their winning ways, 26-7 with a win over Cal. With Oregon's loss, the Cardinal are now the second team in the conference. Actually, they slip into the conference championship game against USC, so they'll have a rematch against their hated rival. How about an upset in another rivalry, the I-10 showdown? The UTEP Miners beating New Mexico State 37-33. Another upset, this one for the Fremont Cannon, 34-24. UNLV is now going bowling with this big win. And in the battle for the Idaho Trophy, the Cullen Payton falling short. Idaho, not only a huge win over a rival, that clinches the Vandals into the conference championship game. And that wraps up our slate of games for Week 13. Danny?
Yeah, a game I do want to mention is Long Beach, Cal State Fullerton. I mean, that was a good matchup between both these teams and a great way for Long Beach to end off their season, especially with how good they're doing. So, good job for Long Beach.
And Pig Bear? Pig Bear?
But there are a few other games you could call it, like, we should hypothetically do an I-10 tournament, because that spans basically the whole continental United States, east-west. Well, not, yeah. I was thinking of I-20, which deadbolts in Texas at I-10. But yeah, just seeing how there are actually a lot of college football heritage along that. But good job in that I-10 game. UTEP won, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, good job for the Miners there.
Big upset. Let's take a look at this graphic Danny put together. This might be subject to change. There may be some other teams here, but there may be one more team on the way, but these are all of the bowl-eligible teams after 13 weeks in the 2022 FBS season. Danny, anything you want to point out here?
Yeah, just the large variety of teams. We have teams from all over the country, different states, different stadiums, different fan bases, all going to a bowl game, which really is great for all these teams. And no matter how your regular season ended, if you go to a bowl game, you could technically count your season as success because you are a lot better than several other teams that we could say.
An omission I think I just noticed. Hawaii is also bowl eligible. I don't think they're on here. But Pig Bear, any thoughts on this crop here?
No, not much.
We'll take a move on now. Here are the bowl eligible teams from each conference. ACC managed 6 teams. The Big East has 8. 7 to the Big 10, 8 to the Big 12, as well as the Conference USA. The Independents are at 2. However, they could have one more because Navy has yet to play their final game of the year. If they beat Army, they have their 6th win, and as such are bowl eligible. The MAC has 7 teams. The Missouri Valley will have 6. The Mountain West is tied with the Sun Belt and WAC for the most with 9. The Pac-10 has 6. The SEC has 7. The SoCon has 6, and the Southland has 7, for a total of 107 bowl-eligible teams at the moment. That could be 108 by by the end of week 15. Let's move on now to the one team knocking outside, as previously mentioned. That is Navy. They, of course, are off this week. They play Army on December 10th. That will be a very exciting game. Of course, it's going to be our 2KU Saturdays for that week. What will we do for this week? Well, you'll see. But let's take a move on now to talking about Columbia. The Columbia Lions are your 2022 Ivy League champions. Of course, the first team to clinch their conference championship, since there is no title game in the conference. Columbia finishes a lot better than you'd think. They are 10-2 on the season. They have the chance to be the first team in almost 55 years in Ivy League history to finish with an 11th win if they can win the Pinstripe Bowl. Danny?
Yeah, it's great to see Columbia make it far. I mean, last year it was a good matchup between Yale and Harvard that basically determined who was number 1 and number 2. But for Columbia, they performed extremely well. I mean, 10-2, they could be ranked if they win the Pinstripe Bowl, maybe.
10-2, as especially jarring as opposed to last year where they ended up 3-9. Pigbear, your thoughts on this Columbia team?
Pigbear?
I assume he's not here. We'll move on from that to...
Yeah. You go from 3-9.
Oh, sorry about that. Keep going.
I'm not saying he should be your coach of the year, but he should be at least be in the running.
We did have our nominations for Coach of the Year. Columbia's coach was not nominated. We'll be talking about the award winners next week. Don't forget to stay tuned for that. We'll move on now from that part. Sorry about that. Move on to the Division 2. We're going each conference or each level's playoff format one week after another. We had Division 3 last week. We're doing Division 2 this week. It's similar to Division 3, but a little different. There are only 4 subdivisions as opposed to the 6 of Division 3. The conference champions automatically qualify. Top 6 non-AQs get into the bracket. Though actually one bracket only has 3 conferences, that being the East. Every other one has 4. The 1 and 2 seeds get the automatic bids, and they actually are the hosts for the regional games as opposed to the other system. And we have the final 4 teams playing at a neutral site, reseeded much like they are in D3, but only 4 teams here. They all play at the neutral site, the Children's Mercy, I believe. I don't remember the actual name of it, but it's the Kansas Stadium, home of Sporting KC of the MLS. We'll start in the East region. The number 23 Assumption Greyhounds play the Edinburgh Scots. The winner takes on the host of this side of the bracket, the West Virginia State Yellow Jackets, at Dickerson Stadium in Institute, West Virginia. The other game on that side being the number 13 Notre Dame Falcons of Ohio taking on the Shaney Wolves. On the other side in Erie, Pennsylvania, the host team being the number 7 Gannon Golden Knights. Number 25 Lock Haven takes on number 10 New Haven. And the winner of the Muhlenberg Mules and the Mount Union Purple Raiders take on the number 7 Golden Knights of Gannon University. Danny?
Yeah, it's good to see all these teams performed well, and let's see how all these teams perform, and could be a fun matchup in the Division 2.
Pigbear, thoughts?
Yeah, just seeing those games go on.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to the second group, the South region. I'm pretty sure Pigbear will have a lot more to talk about. In this case, we have the Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls taking on the West Georgia Wolves in the Mars Hill section of the bracket. The winner of that game, of course, taking on the number 5 Mars Hill Lions. The other game on that bracket, the Delta State Statesmen, the number 15 team in the country, take on the number 14 Albany State Golden Rams. On the other side, in Clinton, Mississippi, the number 18 Carson Newman Eagles take on the number 12 Virginia Union Panthers. Florida Tech Panthers take on the Morehouse Maroon Tigers. The winner taking on the host of the region, the number 6 Mississippi College Choctaws. Any thoughts, Danny?
Not too much. I mean, a lot of these teams, they are pretty highly ranked, and one game that I guess I do have to call out might be, I think maybe Delta State against Albany State. I mean, that one might be a fun matchup to see if they're shown at all on television or on streaming service.
I believe Pigbear has left, so we'll move on from the South region to the Midwest region. The Central Missouri Mules taking on the Southwest Baptist Bearcats in the Sioux Falls Regional. The winner going to face off against the number 2 Sioux Falls Cougars at Bob Young Field. The other game on that bracket, the number 2 Walsh Cavaliers taking on the number 8 Northern State Wolves. The Quincy Hawks take on the number 16 Nebraska Kearney Lopers. In the Painesville, Ohio Regional. And the Minnow State Beavers take on the number 24 Pittsburgh State Gorillas. The winner plays the Lake Erie Storm. I saw Pigbear join in. I'll let him talk about the. If you have any thoughts here about this, I assume you don't because he just joined. But Danny, any thoughts here?
Yeah. I mean, similar that I don't really keep up a lot with the D2, but I know like some of these teams, they're pretty prominent. And they do really want to get D1 D1 invites. So to see all of them like performing this well, it's pretty impressive for them.
Mm-hmm. And we'll move on to.
I don't really have thoughts on a few local Division II teams and like J.C. Smith and Mars Hill, and on West Virginia. It's on the West Virginia schools.
We'll wrap up here then. The West region, the final of the 4 regions. In Spearfish, South Dakota, we'll see our first games. The Oklahoma Baptist Bison take on the Midwestern State Mustangs. The winner of that game face off against the number 1 team in D2, the Black Hills State Yellow Jackets. The other game on that bracket, the number 20 UTPB Falcons, Texas Permian Basin, taking on the only Canadian team in the NCAA, the number 17 Simon Fraser Red Leafs, formerly the Clan. We'll move on to the Monticello bracket. Number 21, the Southeast Oklahoma Savage Storm, take on the Texas A&M Kingsville Javelinas, one of my favorite nicknames in college football. Number 21 versus number 11 in that matchup. The Adams State Grizzlies play the Western Oregon Wolves. The winner gets the number 9 Arkansas Monticello Boll Weevils. Any thoughts?
No, not too much. I mean, I know the Boll Weevils for having their mascot per se, but other than that, that's kind of it for me.
And Pigbear?
What's the javelina?
A javelina is a boar.
Okay.
I believe it's the Spanish name for a wild boar. We'll move on to something y'all will have some stuff to talk about, like the top 25. We're gonna do things a little differently. We have a lot of teams contending for the top spots, so we're gonna reveal it backwards this week from number 5 to number 1, and then go the rest of the way as normal. Number 5 is going to be USC. The Trojans have a lot of great wins on their schedule, but of course they're behind all of the unbeaten teams in this bracket. Any thoughts on this USC team, guys?
They have a lot of good wins, especially their win against Stanford, but they still have some losses that hold them back, and let's hope they can really bounce back from everything.
Pigbear?
Yeah, it's just hopefully they can melt.
They'll have to. They have Stanford on the docket, as we'll talk about later. Number 4 is going to be the Yukon Huskies. Yukon has been performing extremely well. One of the best defenses, not just in their conference, but in the country, we've seen from this Yukon squad. And we'll have to see how they play. They have a tough game against Temple for the conference championship. Danny?
Yeah, Yukon is an extremely good team, and I have to give them all the respect for even performing this well in the Big East and in the country. So, gotta really give props to them for coming out here, going out there, and playing the best ball they can.
Pigbear?
Yep. Just good job for the Huskies.
We'll move on. Number 3 now. We're going to see who is our number 3, but also that'll explain who is our top 2. But if you've been watching, you'd know. Number 3 here is Illinois. The Illinois Fighting Illini still unbeaten through this year. They have quality wins against teams like Indiana and Michigan. But they'll have to get one more as they will play Michigan State in the conference championship game. Danny?
Yeah, Illinois, they are really much a surprise team. You know, they started off the year with a good win against Missouri and St. Louis, and they have just been winning more and more and more, which, gotta say, if they perform really well in the conference championship game, they might be able to jump who is right ahead of them.
And Pigbear?
Yeah, it's weird seeing a Big Ten team who's in their conference championship this low down.
Well, that's because we have two of the best teams we've ever seen in our top 2 here. We'll move on to number 2, and the team that's been breaking everything, you could say, and that's Boise State. Possibly one of the best offenses we've ever seen. 50 points per game. One of the best offenses in as well as a defense that's not to overlook. They have an amazing defensive outfit, one of the best in their conference. It's just a completely dominant squad who might have been the number 1 if it wasn't for an iffy conference schedule. Danny?
Yeah, that Boise State, they do have a lot of good wins, especially for at a time was a really good Oregon team, or was thought to be a good Oregon team, and TCU, that was like last week, I believe, or like 2 weeks ago. They do have still some good wins, but also they have a lot of like easy games on their schedule compared to other teams. So
something to take into consideration for this Boise State team. Also, both of their biggest wins were on the road. Oh, I mentioned Memphis' Road Warriors. Don't forget Boise State. Pigbear?
Let me apologize. I thought we were doing the bottom of the rankings. I got mixed up there. I'm tired. Long day, long weekend. But yeah, just the Broncos. They're contender.
They are a contender, for sure. But the number 1 team is another one who's just been breaking every record you could think of. Went the wrong way. Pardon me. The Oklahoma State Cowboys. Number 1, they rocketed up after they beat Baylor. Some people thought they may have been ranked a little too high. However, they've proven all of their naysayers wrong, and they have proven that they belong to be there. They have their Big 12 championship game against Colorado coming up this week. Danny?
they have a lot amount of good wins. Like they played against Rutgers on the road, which was a good win. They played against Baylor, played against Texas and Oklahoma, which are pretty good teams, and more teams we could go through the schedule, which are pretty good wins to prove they are the number 1 team in the country.
Pigbear?
Yeah, it's just they need to prove it.
All right. We'll go the rest of the way 5 at a time as we usually do. Starting with number 6 in the country. That's going to be Virginia Tech. The Hokies slip into number 6 after LSU's loss. LSU is now number 7. And the Tigers have their first loss of the season against an unranked Tulane team, which drops them all the way from number 3 down to number 7. North Carolina is now number 8. They play number 6 Virginia Tech in the ACC championship game. Number 9 is Georgia Tech. They play LSU in their conference championship game. All 4 of those teams are all 11-1. So those are going to be some great matchups in their conference title games. And that wraps up with number 10, the Stanford Cardinal. And a very interesting thing going on in the last half of the rankings. Number 5 and 10 play each other. Number 7 and 9 play each other. And number 6 and 8 play each other that week. Any thoughts about these 5, Danny?
Yeah, that these 5, they could really help out some of the teams that are in the top 5. Like, if let's say USC gets a big win over Stanford again, that might be able to push them up a bit more above some of these other teams. And similar things I could say about Virginia Tech and UNC, which are big games. Georgia Tech, LSU, that's a good rematch game, which we're gonna have some fun with. And yeah,
Pretty much all of these teams could make the national championship if the cards line up just right. Pig Bear?
Yeah, I'm excited for the Tigers and the Ramblin' Wreck in Atlanta.
They're in their home city. Georgia Tech will be. We'll move on to the next five. Number 11 is going to be TCU. They got a win over Baylor. Baylor didn't fall too much because of everyone else below them falling out. But we'll talk about number 12, Stephen F. Austin. Have yourself a season. The number 12 Lumberjacks are 12-0 on the year. They play Southeastern Louisiana to try and win their conference championship game. Number 13, as mentioned, is Baylor. Baylor, they're second in their division to Oklahoma State, of course. They will likely be playing in a pretty good bowl game against a ranked team, likely Stanford or USC. That'll be a great matchup. Number 14 is Memphis, the best team in the Conference USA, most likely heading to a BCS Bowl with a win over UCF next week. But they can't look ahead of their opponent. That's what Oregon did against Oregon State. And last week, the Ducks were a spot above them. Number 15, wrapping up the top 15, is Temple. Now, Temple has been a team that I feel has gotten a little overlooked. However, they're a 10-2 team who hasn't lost in conference. They'll be playing UConn in the conference championship, and they are still in a great position to be playing for a BCS Bowl. Danny, thoughts on these five?
yeah. For those five, they're really impressive. I mean, Stephen F. Austin, give yourselves a pat on the back and claim yourself a big championship thing because you are really impressive. And also, some of these teams can help out boost us some of the teams above them if things fall in their way. But we gotta really see how things eventually play out.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, again, we just got some more interesting football coming up.
Well, next five up, number 16 is Colorado. The Buffaloes jumping big with a win over Texas Tech, and a Kansas loss means that they have won their division. They'll play the number 1 Cowboys in the conference championship. Number 17 is Idaho, a team that I was kind of surprised was ranked at all last week. Now it would seem like a fool's errand not to have them here. They're 10-2. They won their division. They'll be playing in their conference championship game against Nevada. A team that could finish the season with 12 wins, as a certain New Mexico State did last year. Number 18, UCF. They had a rocky start for sure, but then they just kept winning. They've won 9 straight since their third loss of the season to North Carolina. We'll move down to number 19, Michigan. Falling a little after their loss to Ohio State. The Wolverines wrap up 9-3. And number 20 is Michigan State, popping into the rankings for the first time this year. The Spartans are your Big Ten Legends Division champions. They play Illinois for the Big Ten championship game. Danny?
Yeah, I'm happy to see UCF being in this position. They're in a really good spot, and UCF, they're still red hot. So Memphis State really got to watch out for their backs. And Michigan State, even though they're right below their bigger brother, I mean, they're still going to the conference championship. They're still really impressive out there. And Idaho, big shocker. They weren't even ranked like 3 weeks ago, and here they are in the top 20. So
They were a
good
sleeper
job for
team.
them.
Michigan State's one loss in conference was to the it was their one loss in conference was to Michigan. Pig Bear?
Yeah, again, Michigan State's one loss to Michigan, and they're in the conference title. That's great.
Actually, I'm gonna fact check that. Oh yeah, correction. They did lose in week 1 to Northwestern.
Sorry.
We'll move on to our last 5. And this is big because we had some high-profile teams drop out. Kansas is out, Oregon is out, and New Mexico State is out. And our last 5 are all outside the... Actually, omitting Washington, who remains ranked from last week. Our last 5 are all from outside the power conferences. Number 22 is Central Michigan. The 10-2 Chippewas are playing in the conference championship against Ohio. 23 is Nevada. They'll play Idaho in a ranked versus ranked WAC title game. Number 24 returning to the top 25 after a loss the other week was Coastal Carolina. That loss was their only loss of the season. Don't be shocked if they beat North Texas and jump up in the rankings and potentially play in a BCS Bowl bid. Number 25 is Northern Illinois, a team not playing in the conference championships, sure, but they are still 11-1 on the season. Their one loss is to Central Michigan, who has tiebreakers over the Huskies. Danny?
Yeah, that many of these teams, they were teams that were popping in and out. So now here they all are just resting their place. And the one team I'm really disappointed in is Northern Illinois. I mean, come on, you went from top 10 or top 5 at one point in the season to now number 25. Pretty disappointing.
Pigbear?
Yeah, it's just a disappointing season for them.
All right, we'll move on here. Look at the next teams up. New Mexico State just outside. They ended up 10-2, 6-2 in conference. Wyoming is a 10-win team. Only one loss in conference. That was to Boise State, who they'll play in the Mountain West Championship. UMass is still on the outside looking in. They're 10-2. Their one conference loss was to UConn. We'll move on to Oregon State, who's had huge wins all season. Correction to that record, they are 9-3 on the year. They are 6-3 in conference. How about Kansas? 8-4, 5-3, finishing in conference. They had some tough losses, which kept them out of their conference championship to rivals Missouri and Kansas State. And Oregon, wrapping us out, they dropped out this week, 8-4 and 6-3 at the end of. Oh, thank you. There, at the end of their regular season, Danny.
Yeah, that some of these teams they really popped in and out. I mean, the one disappointing team is Oregon, who dropped like a rock, like hard to the ground. So sad to see them barely hanging on. And for some of these other teams, you really gotta hope chaos happens above them for them to at least get ranked.
Pigbear?
Yeah, it's just good.
All right, we're going to move on here. Let's talk about conference championships. We're going to go through every single game that we have on the Week 14 docket, and we're going to break them down for you to show. And we're going to give all the stats you need to know and all of the matchups that you can look forward to this conference championship week on coming up next Saturday. Let's start on Friday. We're going to start with the Southern Conference Championship, the SoCon title game. The 9-3 William and Mary Tribe taking on the also 9-3 Georgia Southern Eagles. William and Mary, the last time they won the conference championship was back in 2002. And this is the first time they've ever appeared in the SoCon Championship game. Meanwhile, Georgia Southern's last title was back in 2018. They have They've won the title game twice in 2017 and 2018. They lost in 2016 and last year. That was the last time they were in a separate. Last time they were here, they lost to App State. Meanwhile, looking at the offense and defense matchups, William & Mary is second in offense in the SoCon with just over 33 points per game. Third is Georgia Southern, who's 29.91 points per game. The leading offense is Appalachian State. On defense, William & Mary is probably one of the best outfits the SoCon has seen in the last decade, with a 20.75 points per game, and they make it look flashy. Meanwhile, Georgia Southern is rocking the second best defense in the Southern Conference, 22.33 points per game. The index we're using to determine who's most likely to win says it's a 61% chance for William & Mary, 39 for Georgia Southern. If you remember, William & Mary won earlier this year, back in Week 12, in the matchup between the Tribe and the Eagles. I'm going to be picking William & Mary. I think they beat them a second time to take home their first SoCon championship game. Danny, who do you have in this game?
I'm taking the Tribe. The Tribe, they are performing really well. They have good stats. They beat Georgia Southern earlier this year, so I have really big hopes that they will beat them again.
And Pigbear?
Actually, give me the Eagles in an upset.
Interesting. Very interesting. That would be the first conference loss this season for William & Mary. Georgia Southern is 5-3. We'll move on to the Conference USA Championship. Number 14 Memphis taking on number 18 UCF. The Memphis Tigers, the last time they were in the Conference USA title game was the very first Conference USA Championship back in 2005. This is the second time in school history they have finished, or they have an 11-1 record. They finished 11-1 back in 1963. In terms of offense, the Tigers are second only to Houston in terms of total points, 36 points per game, and their defense is the best in the conference with just over 19 points per game. As for UCF, as previously mentioned, they've won 9 straight, and after starting 0-3, their last Conference USA Championship was back in 2018. They're 1-2 in the title game. They lost in 2015 and 2017, both to Houston. In terms of offense, UCF is actually 9th with a 30.66 point per game. However, their defense picks up the slack. They are 5th in the Conference USA with 25.25 points per game. In terms of the matchup, I'm going with the Memphis Tigers. I think as a all-around unit, they're one of the best teams in the Power Conference, and I could see them lining up for a BCS Bowl when all said and done. Danny, who are you picking in this game?
This one's a really tough one because UCF, they are hot, they are on fire, they have won 9 straight, they are winning pretty nicely, and they are coming off really big wins. Memphis, they have themselves a better overall record. You know what? I'm gonna say give me the Knights in an upset. I think they have enough momentum behind them and enough strength that maybe they could give a shocker to the Tigers.
And Pigbear?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the safe choice and choose Memphis here. Just logic and everything behind it. Thinks Memphis will win here.
Gotta go the logic. Let's take a move on now to the Saturday game, starting with the... Actually, never mind. We have one more Friday game, pardon me. We have the Pac-10 Championship game. This one's been hyped up for a while. The number 10 Stanford Cardinal taking on the number 5 USC Trojans. USC is 11-1. Their last Pac-10 championship was back in 2016. They're 2-3 in the title game. They won in 2013 and 2016. They lost in 2012, 2018, and 2019. Stanford, the reigning Pac-10 and reigning national champions, of course. They're 2-1 in the Pac-10 championship game. They won in 2017 as well as last year. Their one loss was in 2013. This is the second time that the Trojans and the Cardinal have faced off. USC won the last one back in 2013. That was en route to USC playing in a national championship game. They lost to Penn State that year. In terms of the outfits, USC is rocking the best offense in the Pac-10 with 33.33 points per game. Their defense is third with a 24.67 point per game. Stanford has the second best defense in the Pac-10 with 24.5 points per game, and the third best offense with 38.083 points per game. In terms of the matchup, you think USC would be a shoo-in. They beat Stanford earlier this year, and they bolster and they rocked that win over the Cardinal a few weeks ago as proof. But as the great Lee Corso would say, not so fast. I'm thinking chaos happens. I'm picking Stanford in an upset to repeat as conference champions. How about Pigbear? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm fair with you. Go Cardinal.
Danny?
This one's a really tough one. I think I might have to agree with you guys with Stanford, but it'll be a really, really close matchup between the two.
All right, we're going to move on now. Now we're going to our Saturday games, starting in the Big Ten Championship game at noon. The Michigan State Spartans coming in as a overwhelming underdog here. They finished 9-3 on the year. The Spartans' last Big Ten championship, you have to go back to 1994 for that, back when the Big Ten still had 11 teams. This is the first time the Spartans have appeared in the conference championship game. Illinois' last Big Ten championship was back in 2008. They played in the Big Ten title game only once. They lost to Michigan back in 2011. The Illini and the Spartans are tied for second best offense in the conference. Michigan is the first. They both have 33.33 points per game. Illinois has the best defense in the Big Ten with 17.25 points per game. Michigan State is fifth in defense with 25.25 points per game. The numbers say overwhelmingly Illinois is the favorite, 81% to Michigan State's 19. I like the Illini very much. I think it's gonna be a big win for Illinois, but closer than the experts think. I think Michigan State plays great in the game, but I think the Illini pull away at the end. Danny?
I think I'm going to pick Illinois to win this one as well. I mean, Illinois, they are performing really well, still undefeated, scoring a ton of points, so really got to give props to them.
Pigbear?
I'd like to make an apology to every Illinois fan and the great people of the state of Illinois. I'm sorry for saying your team is so low ranked when they were in the top 5. I was just so tired, I forgot. Not so fast, though. Give me Sparty in an upset.
Ooh. I'm sure Illini fans think that 3 is low for their unbeaten team. That would be huge if Michigan State upsets them. That would also mean that Illinois is not going to the Rose Bowl. That would put Sparty in the Rose Bowl. We'll move on now to the MAC Championship. Number 22, Central Michigan will be the heavy favorites taking on Ohio. The Central Michigan Chippewas' last championship was back in 2018. They're 3-1 in the MAC title, winning in 2006, 2012, and 2018. Their one loss was in 2020. As for Ohio, the Bobcats last won the MAC title back in 2005. They're 2-3 in the MAC title game. They won in 98 and 2005. Their losses were in 99, 04, and 2019. In terms of total offense, Ohio is 9th in the MAC with 24.583 points per game. Their defense, though, is 2nd in the conference with 20.81 points per game. As for Central Michigan, they are 2nd in the MAC in total offense with 35.3 points per game. Their defense is 4th with 21.67 points per game. Central Michigan has the 72-28 edge over Ohio in terms of the votes, but I'm going to pick the Chippewas. I'm going to agree with the numbers. Central Michigan gets to 11 wins on the season. Danny?
Yeah, give me Central Michigan to win this. I mean, yes, Ohio did technically beat them earlier this year, but that was like in week 2, and it was in Ohio, so I'm sure then compared to now, it's extremely different. I'm sure Central Michigan will get the revenge.
And Pigbear? Pigbear?
Let's go Bobcats.
Whoa. In an upset, he's picking them.
I'm picking Chaos.
All right, we'll move on here to the Big 12 Championship. Number 16, Colorado, taking on number 1, Oklahoma State. The Cowboys' last championship was back in 2014. They're 2-1 in the Big 12 title game. They won back in 2012 and 2014. Their one loss came in 2009. And, of course, if they win this game, they're into the national championship game. As for Colorado, their last Big 12 championship wasn't that long ago. It was back in 2019. That was their last appearance in the game. They've won in 96, 2001, and 2019. Their 2 losses were back in 2005 and in 2016. They, of course, clinched with Kansas' loss to Kansas State. In terms of offense, Oklahoma State is the best in the Big 12 by far with a 43.42 points per game. Their defense, though, is lacking a little behind. They're only 6th in the Big 12 with 25.42 points per game. Meanwhile, for Colorado, they have the 3rd best offense in the Big 12 with 34.5 points per game. But their defense is actually 2nd worst in the conference, only to Texas Tech, allowing 31.75 points per game. The Buffs have won all of their games very close. The numbers favor Oklahoma State 78-22. I'm going to have to agree. The Cowboys pick up their. I keep wanting to say the Sooners, but it's the Cowboys who get the win and move on to the national championship game. Danny, your pick?
Oklahoma State easily. Oklahoma State is potentially one of the best teams in the country, and I think Oklahoma State will run the table easily.
Pigbear?
Big Bear.
Pigbear? Alright, if he's not going to respond, we're going to move on here to the ACC Championship. I'm sure he'll have something to say about this if he's awake. Fun story, he fell asleep last time. We'll move on to our ACC Championship game. Number 6, Virginia Tech, and number 8, North Carolina. The Hokies are looking for their 3rd straight ACC Championship. That's never been done in the conference's history. With a win here, they'd advance to 3-1 in the ACC Championship. They're 2-1 as of now. Their one loss was back in 2011. Oh, I believe that's Pigbear who left. As for North Carolina, their last ACC Championship was back in 2008. That was their lone win in the ACC Championship. They've lost 4 in 2007, 2009, 2013, and 2019. The Tar Heels and the Hokies are 2 of the best teams in the conference by far. Vatek has the 2nd best offense in the conference with 33.17 points per game. Their defense is 1st with 14.3 points per game. The Tar Heels offense is the number 1 in the ACC with 34.3 points per game. Their defense is 2nd in the conference with 23.17 points per game. The numbers favor the Hokies. I'm going to have to disagree. I'm picking North Carolina to win in an upset. We saw Virginia Tech struggle against a team like Maryland, so the Tar Heels may have a chance to expose that weakness and take home their first crown since '08. Danny, who are you picking?
I'm gonna pick Virginia Tech. I mean, they might have had some struggles against some teams, but reminder, there was at one point in the beginning of the season when North Carolina, they would only win their games by a minimum of 3 points and a maximum of 7.
You're picking
So they
Tech.
had their struggles. So I'm going to pick Virginia Tech to potentially win this game.
They'll be going for that 3-peat. Pigbear, I believe you got back. You got any thoughts on this game?
Hokie hey, Hokie hi, Polytech VPI.
Mm-hmm. And since you're back now, we did the Big 12 championship. Number 1 Oklahoma State, number 16 Colorado. Your thoughts here?
Go Buffs.
Oh, you're picking Colorado in an upset.
Yeah, I'm picking Chaos.
The number 1 will fall, according to Pigbear. Let's move on now to the Southland Conference. Number 12, Stephen F. Austin. One of the most dominant teams you've ever seen in this conference. The first undefeated season since 1983. That was when they won the FCS championship that season. This is their first time in the Southland Conference championship game. Their last Southland championship was back in 2005. The last appearance of Southeast Louisiana was never. They've never appeared in the Southland title game, and they've never won the Southland championship. In fact, they're the first team in Southland history to win their division with only 7 wins. As for the breakdown, this is probably one of the biggest upsets you could think of if Southeast Louisiana manages to take a big win here. Meanwhile, looking at the matchups, SFA's defense is the best in the country. Up there is one of the best in the nation. A 15.25 point per game allowed for the Lumberjacks. Their offense is 2nd in the Southland with 38.917 points per game. First is Sam Houston. As for Southeast Louisiana, their offense is 8th in the conference with 26.416 points per game. Their defense is 5th with 28.17 points per game. The numbers heavily favor Stephen F. Stephen F. Austin, and I think I agree. I think the Lumberjacks get a huge win, go 13-0, and potentially slip into a BCS bid. Danny, your thoughts?
Speaking of Austin, they should win easily. They're one of the best teams in the country, still undefeated, and I think they're going to keep the streak going.
Pigbear?
The state of Louisiana is a great state. Love Cajun food, love gumbo. Those numbers are way too high. Go Lumberjacks.
All right. It would have been the biggest super dog ever if you picked it and it happens, but we're going to move on now to the...
I'm not that crazy. I'm not that crazy.
The Big East Championship game. That logo was done by yours truly. I did it back at the start of the season. I probably could do better now. But the Big East Football Championship at Meadowlands. This is the first time it's been here. It was at Philadelphia. Last year it was in Philadelphia, of course. The UConn Huskies, the number 4 team in the country, about to take on number 15 Temple. Both teams over 10 wins. The Huskies are unbeaten. 9-0 in conference, 12-0 overall. Their last Big East championship was back in 2015. They're 1-2 in the Big East title game. They've lost in 2012 and 2019. Temple's the last time they won the Big East, that was back when they were sharing it. Their last title was a shared title in 1993 with Miami. They are 0-2 in the Big East championship game. They went back-to-back years in 2016 and 2017, losing both times. As UConn's offense is 3rd in the Big East with a 33.583 point per game, and their defense, number 1 in the Big East, 16.667 points per game. Temple is 6th in offense and defense with 31 points per game for, and 16.667 points against. The numbers favor UConn 75% to 25 over the Owls. Though I'm feeling good on this Temple team, but I gotta pick UConn. They're dominant on defense. I think they shut down the Owls all day and complete a perfect season with a conference championship and maybe something more. Danny?
Yeah, give me UConn as well. UConn, they are really dominant, especially on defense. I believe they're also the number 1 team in the country when it comes to defense.
I believe it's actually Virginia Tech who's number 1.
Okay. Well, they're still one of the best teams in the country when it comes to defense, so they're really impressive, and I believe they'll just shut out Temple, and they might be able to jump up a few spots to maybe get number 2, maybe if they perform good enough.
Pigbear?
Yeah, give me the Huskies is what I would say. No, UConn.
All right. You're not that crazy. We'll move on now to the SEC Championship. This one just means more, and it's never meant more than it does now. The number 7 LSU Tigers, the number 9 Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, both teams 7-1 in conference. Tech's one loss was to LSU, and hopefully they can rebound here in their home city in Atlanta. The Yellow Jackets' last SEC title was back in 2017. They're 2-5 in the SEC title game. They won in 2014 and 2017. They lost in 97, 2007, 2009, 2012, and 2018. As for the Tigers, they are 4-0 in the championship game since 2006. They're 4-4 overall. They're the reigning SEC champions, of course. They won in 2010, 2012, 2018, and last year they lost in 92, 96, 2005, and 2006. The Tigers have the second best offense in the conference with 34.167 points per game. Their defense is number 1, only allowing 18.083 points per game. The number 1 offense in the country is Georgia Tech, or not in the country, in the conference is Georgia Tech. They score 36 points per game, and they only allow 23.667 points per game. That's good enough for 5th in the SEC. Close game. I think the home crowd is enough for Georgia Tech to pull off the upset and get revenge for the showdown against LSU. Give me the Yellow Jackets in this game. Though actually the numbers do favor the Jackets 55-45. I'm picking Georgia Tech here. Danny?
Give me LSU to win. Earlier this season, LSU went to Georgia Tech and they beat Georgia Tech in their home stadium. So this is basically another LSU playing at Georgia Tech. So it should be nothing too out of familiar for LSU, just them playing in another stadium. But give me the Tigers to win.
Pigbear?
Um, let's break this down.
Break it down.
This, by all means, is definitely neutral site fan base, neutral site game. The Georgia Tech fan base does not show out to things like this. They'll never really have too much of a home field advantage.
They might show out here. They're 11-1.
Yeah, they're gonna get more than that. They're gonna get decent fans, but it's not gonna be a Georgia Tech home game by any means. But having that said, they have revenge on their mind. And give me the Ramblin' Wreck.
You had Georgia Tech in your national championship. I still remember that.
Yep.
That might happen. They need some chaos above them to happen. However, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Hey, it's all part of the master plan. Why do you think my picks were so crazy?
Ha! How about we move on here to the Sun Belt Conference? And we already saw this game clinched a few weeks prior. We now know the magnitude of the matchup. North Texas 9-3, 8-0 in conference play. They haven't lost in conference. Coastal Carolina, their opponent, has lost. But they're still 11-1 overall. This is the first season Coastal Carolina has been in the Sun Belt. They're in the SoCon from 2016 to present. Their last conference championship appearance in the SoCon was 2019. They are 1-1 in the SoCon championship. Their one loss was in 2020. As for North Texas, their last Sun Belt championship was back in 2017, which was their first appearance in the championship game. As such, they are 1-0 in the conference title game. In terms of offense, Coastal is third in the Sun Belt with 33.58 points per game. The number one is actually Louisiana with 37 points per game. As for North Texas, they are sixth with 27.75 points per game. On defense, no one is better in the conference than Coastal. 18.53 points per game. North Texas is also sixth in defense with 26.417 points per game. The numbers favor Coastal. I'm going to pick Coastal to take the win here in Narlands over the Mean Green and capture their first ever Sun Belt championship. Danny?
Yeah, give me Coastal as well. They are one of the better teams in the Sun Belt, and I believe they will have themselves just a one-loss season.
Pigbear?
Go Mullets.
All right. We'll move on here to the Missouri Valley Championship in St. Louis. North Dakota State taking on Northern Iowa. The Panthers are 9-3 and 6-2 in conference. Their last championship in the Missouri Valley was back in 2017. They are 3-0 in the title game since it was formed. They won the inaugural one in 2014, won it again in 2015, and of course they won in 2017. As for North Dakota State, their last Missouri Valley title was back in 2020. They're 2-1 in the title game, winning back-to-back in 2019 and 2020, and losing in 2016. In terms of offense, the number one team in the conference is the Northern Iowa Panthers with over 35 points per game. Their defense is third with 22.8 points allowed. North Dakota State's offense is fifth in the Missouri Valley with 30.917 points per game. Their defense is fourth with 25 points per game allowed. The numbers favor Northern Iowa, but it's close. It's 58-42. I'm actually liking North Dakota State to win in an upset here. To win it would be third conference championship. Danny, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, it has to be Northern Iowa. I mean, earlier this season, North Dakota State actually traveled to played against Northern Iowa at least. I believe it was in Fargo, maybe? You could fact check me that, but Northern Iowa did beat North Dakota State, so I believe Northern Iowa will do that again.
Pigbear?
Go Bison.
You're picking the Bison. Let me fact check Danny. He mentioned North Dakota State. They traveled to Fargo, and North Dakota State won that game. 27-20 was the final on that. I'm saying history repeats itself, and I'm picking the Bison to win in St. Louis. Now we move on to the WAC championship. Who expected this to be between two ranked teams, and none of them are New Mexico State? We'll take a look at the matchup here. The number 23 Nevada Wolfpack are 10-2, 7-1 in conference. Their last WAC championship was back in 2017. They're 1-2 in the WAC championship game. They lost in 2009 and 2019. The Idaho Vandals are 10-2, 7-1. Their last WAC championship was back in 2018. They're 1-1 in the WAC championship game, but they only played. They won in 2018. They lost back in 2003. Now, a fun fact about 2KU WAC: there was no WAC championship in 2011 because there weren't enough teams at the time. All right, that's the 1 year that wasn't. But we'll move on to the fact that the Vandals are 10-2. This is their second 10-win season since joining the FBS rejoining the FBS back in 1995. Their first was in 2018. They finished 11-3 that season. The Wolfpack have the fourth best offense in the WAC, 32.583 points per game. Their defense is sixth with 28.75 points allowed. The Vandals are fifth in offense in the WAC. They're 31.417 points per game. Their defense is third, 22.083 points per game. Idaho, the slight favorites in the matchup, 54-46. Give me the Vandals to win their 11th game. Though a lot closer than the experts might even suppose. Danny, who are you picking in the WAC title game?
Give me Nevada. I think Nevada, they have enough power, they have enough momentum behind them. I believe they can run the table and beat Idaho and maybe get themselves to a BCS championship game.
Pigbear?
Let's go Wolfpack.
I'm the lone Vandal picker here. Let's take a move on now to the Mountain West Football Championship. I believe this is the last slide here. It's the number 2 Boise State Broncos taking on the Wyoming Cowboys. Cowboys were just outside of the rankings, but they are a 10-win team still, 10-2, 7-1. The Cowboys' last Mountain West Championship was back in 2000, so this is the first time they've ever appeared in the Mountain West Championship game. Their only loss in conference was to Boise State back in Week 5, so they got revenge on the mind. Meanwhile, Boise State's last Mountain West Championship was in 2020. They've appeared 7 times in the championship game since joining the Mountain West back in 2011. That's the most appearances by any team in the championship game. And they've won 3. They won in 2012, 2016, and 2020. Their losses were in 2014, 2017, 2019, and last year to Utah. This is their 4th straight conference championship appearance. Of course, on that stretch, they're actually 1-2, pardon me. The Broncos' offense is the best in the country at 50.75 points per game. Their defense is first as well, only allowing the defense is first in the conference at least, only allowing 23.917 points per game. The Cowboys are third in the conference in offense, 37.25 points per game. Their defense is sixth, allowing 26.417 points per game. Danny, who are you picking?
Yeah, give me Boise State. This one should be quite obvious. Should be Boise State, but a little warning for Boise State. Wyoming has very little to lose and everything to gain. So if Wyoming keeps it anything close, Boise State might actually drop a bit in the rankings. So they gotta really watch out.
Pigbear? Pigbear? I don't think he is here at the moment. I'm gonna give my pick. I think Boise is able to find Wyoming's weakness. They did it before. I think they can do it again, and they punched their ticket to the national championship game. And that, I believe, wraps up our conference championship games. So don't forget, we have a new format we're going to be testing on Friday and Saturday, the 2KU radio show with Taipei Joy 101. The radio show will be several long broadcasts throughout Friday and Saturday, where we'll have a couple games each. It'll be a completely audio-based show, so make sure to tune in for that. Keep it on in the background as you're doing other things, and get yourself in the mood for some college football action. We'll be going through every single conference championship game. I'll be doing a private test stream on Thursday to make sure that everything works for that. What are your big matchups what is the biggest matchup you're hoping to, I guess, hear in the conference championship game, Danny?
I really want to hear about the ACC championship game. I mean, these two teams, they're highly closely ranked. These two teams are both 11-1 in the season. They haven't played against each other at all, and this will be a huge game for both these teams in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. We're going to thank you all for watching tonight's stream. Team 2KU Weekly. A big undertaking here. We'll see you all next week. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Pigbear, for joining us here, of course. And we'll see you next time.